The anime begins with the protagonist of this story named Ryuuichi Kashima, along with his younger brother Kotarou, going to meet the director of Morinomiya Academy, because the director was interested in them since the boys lost their parents in a plane crash, and the lady lost her son as well. The boy believes she intends to adopt them, but upon arrival, the director receives them somewhat annoyed because they took too long to get to the institution. Despite his attempts to make a good impression, the woman silences him as she is not interested in adopting them as her children, nor did she do it out of pity, but because the young man knows how to take care of young children. She asks him to work as a nursery teacher at the institution, and in return, they will have food, shelter, and education at the academy. Once the meeting ends, Ryuichi feels embarrassed as he couldn't thank the director for what she's doing for them, but her secretary named Seikoa guides them to the nursery. On the way, the secretary tells him that his duty is to take care of the school employees' children, since the director's late son and his wife created the babysitting club to help but never managed to gather enough students to form the club. Therefore, the protagonist, as the first member of the club, promises to give everything he can since the director invited them to belong to the academy. Seikoa, upon hearing this, is moved and wipes away the tears he shed, but then wishes them both good luck and leaves the young man in front of the nursery. Ryuichi and Kotarou enter the nursery, and 4 children, who were playing run away upon seeing someone new and hide behind a boy who is asleep. Upon waking up, he welcomes both of them, introducing himself as Yoshihiko Useda, a young graduate who still works there as the only member of the nursery, and is grateful for their arrival as it's hard for him to take care of so many children alone. Then one of the children named Taka Kamitani wants to play with them, but Ryuichi says he will be the one to play with the children, since his younger brother is not very sociable. While playing, everyone attacks the protagonist, not letting him escape. While Kotarou tries to save him, but failing, he moves away to look at a book, but with a little jealousy. Then Yoshihiro calls Ryuichi to tell him that he must leave, so he will have to take care of the children until the teachers arrive. The protagonist begins to see how difficult it is to take care of everyone alone as Taka Kamitani climbs on his back to bother him, while he holds the baby of the place. Kirin Kumatsuka, the nursery girl, asks the young man to play with the toy foods, but the Mamizuka brothers ruin Kirin's play area, making her somewhat sad. But fortunately, the protagonist manages to control everything, although he thinks he had no idea that the children had so much energy, while Kotarou is very calm reading his book. After a while, the mothers of the children come to pick up their children and are surprised to see the young man there, as they expected Yoshihito to be the one taking care of the children. The boy introduces himself to them, and they realize that he is the student the director said would work there. The last one to be picked up is Taka, and then a slightly grumpy young student named Hayato appears, saying he's his brother, but the boy doesn't want to leave as he wants to keep playing with Ryuichi, but his brother forces him to leave. Hayato asks the protagonist not to neglect Kotarou as he sees him very lonely, so as he approaches, the boy falls into his legs and the protagonist realizes he has a fever, so he rushes to ask Kamitani for help. The student asks his mother to take care of Taka to take the boy to the hospital. On the way, Ryuichi wonders why his brother pretends to be okay when he's not and why he left him alone for so long. Upon arrival, the doctor tells him it's a fever caused by stress due to the change of place, so with rest, it will pass. The boy feels relieved and goes outside to get some fresh air, but then tries to call his parents to tell them what happened with Kotarou. However, he remembers that his parents are no longer there and won't come back, so tears start running down his cheeks as he thinks his brother is all he has, so he must protect him. At that moment, the director of the institution arrives and tells him that she finally sees him crying since at their parents' funeral. They were the only ones who never cried, and not to try to be strong because what they lost will not come back. Ryuichi goes back into the hospital, and one of the nurses carries Kotarou in her arms, who is crying, and seeing his brother, he asks to go with him. When he holds him, he asks why he never told him he was not feeling well and had to wait until he had a fever, while he wonders if his younger brother realized that their parents would not return. The next day at the academy, the director arrives at her office and calls her secretary to complain about some old flowers on her desk, since visitors might think the academy is in poor condition. But Seikoa informs her that those flowers are a gift from Ryuichi and Kotarou. When the secretary tries to remove the flowers, the director stops him, saying she changed her mind and will keep them. Meanwhile, the protagonist attends his class where Kamitani is also present. Later in the nursery, the other children try to approach Kotarou, and he agrees to read books together, so they all have a nice afternoon together. After a long first day, the protagonist wakes up in the early morning because his brother bothers him. But it's because they are not at home, and spending the night in a new place is strange for them. Then the director of the academy appears to scold the boy, saying it's late and he must get dressed for school even though it's 5 in the morning, but he will have to spend his breaks taking care of the nursery. Later, the young man leaves Kotarou in the nursery and asks him to stay there since he has to attend classes. But when he's in the school hallways, all the students stare at him, making him feel somewhat intimidated. However, when he crosses paths with Hayato, he tells him that the reason everyone is staring is that the children are with him. Ryuichi turns around and realizes that everyone is following him. Taka says that Kotarou followed him, and that's why everyone accompanied them. Hayato threatens Taka to return to the nursery, but as he tries to run away, he bumps into a young student named Maria Inamata, who is angry with the protagonist for bringing the children to school. So without hesitation, he and Hayato take them back to the nursery, while the other students talk about how harsh the girl was with the new student. Meanwhile, Hayato scolds Yoshihito for falling asleep instead of taking care of the children. But then Inamata arrives to leave Taka's lunch, and the children get scared when they see her. Suddenly, Yoshihito receives a message, and immediately he pretends to have a stomach ache and asks Ryuichi and Inamata to stay with the children while he goes to the infirmary. The boys are surprised and don't know what to do, but then Ryuichi says he can handle it, so the girl should go back to class. But she opposes, and at one point she speaks too loudly, waking up the baby and making her cry, so the other children get upset and say they will attack her. Ryuichi asks them to apologize to the girl, but she gets emotional because she realizes that all she does is study and can't have fun even with children. Seeing her like that, the children go to comfort her and apologize for behaving that way. Together, they all cry and hug her, and then they all fall asleep. Later, Ryuichi realizes that his brother is sad, so one of the children tells him that he's sad because Taka told him he shouldn't wear that shirt if he has never seen a tiger, so it made him sad. But Hayato hits him for saying things he shouldn't, and the boy starts crying, saying his brother doesn't love him. But because of the commotion Taka was causing, Hayato takes him away. Then Ryuichi has the idea of taking his brother to the zoo, but Yoshihito hears it and asks to go and also invites the other children. At night, the protagonist talks to the director and asks her permission to take the children to the zoo accompanied by some mothers. The director doesn't give it much importance, so she lets them go, but she gets angry when the young man asks for extra payment for his friend Yoshihiko, which he ultimately doesn't get. The next day, the secretary prepares lunch, sweets, and some money for Ryuichi, who is surprised because he thinks it's too much, but he thanks him anyway. Once they arrive at the zoo, the protagonist gives the money he received to Yoshihito, saying he can consider it part of his payment, but he doesn't accept it because he says he will take pictures and sell them to the parents who didn't attend the excursion. Then Hayato arrives to leave his brother, apologizing because he won't be able to accompany him because he has to attend the club. Later, they spend an afternoon at the zoo where the children have fun meeting all the animals, but they also get scared when they see others like the tiger they wanted to see. Then they stop at a shop to buy souvenirs, and while everyone goes shopping, Yoshihito stays with Taka, who turns around and sees a man who looks like his brother Hayato, so he runs to look for him without Yoshihito noticing. To his surprise, Taka followed him all the way until he realized it wasn't his brother but just a regular man, and then as he tries to run away, he falls and realizes he's lost, so he starts crying, calling for his brother. At that moment, Hayato appears to scold him for getting lost, and Ryuichi, very worried, realizes that the child is okay. Later, the protagonist and Hayato head home carrying their brothers on their backs. Ryuichi tells him it's nice that he went to the zoo because he cares about his brother, but he says he only went because his mother scolded him for leaving Taka alone. Then Ryuichi tells him he should tell his brother that he loves him, but the young man refuses. At that moment, Taka, half asleep, speaks and confesses to Hayato that he loves him, and the student does the same. It's a new day, and Valentine's Day has arrived at Morinomiya Academy. Yoshihito asks the children to give him the chocolates that their mothers surely sent for him, but he is disappointed to know that no one sent him anything. Meanwhile, in class, the students talk about how they are forbidden to bring chocolates on that day, but they still know that some students will give chocolates to their crushes anyway. One of them, named Yuki, intends to give chocolates to Ryuichi. In advanced classes, two handsome students named Tomoya Yaji and Chukichi Nezuki receive chocolates from several students. In that class is Inamata, who listens as the girls get so she immediately loses patience and asks them to follow the institution's rules. Yaji apologizes for the trouble he caused, but then approaches the girl to ask her if she was helping in the nursery to get information as he wants to become a babysitter. However, Inamata gets upset as she believes he should find out for himself about that club. Later, at the nursery, Yaji introduces himself to Ryuichi, who is surprised that the handsome young man they were talking about in the morning wants to join the club, so he accepts him without hesitation and introduces him to all the children, including Yoshihiko, who was sleeping at the moment. The student starts talking kindly to each of them, immediately winning them over. Meanwhile, Inamata in the library overhears two students talking about not believing that Yaji wants to be part of the nursery because he loves children, but to impress the girls since he always seems distant with the children and only stares at them without approaching, which alarms the girl who immediately runs out. When she arrives, she notices that the young man is touching Kotarou's cheek while unknowingly having a nose. Nezu, the student's friend, arrives to tell her that he loves children too much to be a babysitter, which makes the protagonist think badly, and he takes the children with him. But Yaji clarifies that he likes children like normal people, and his problem with the nose was from eating too much chocolate. He also apologizes for the inconvenience while his friend takes him away. Then Taka asks if chocolate can cause that, so upon knowing that it's not the case, he starts asking Inomata for the candy, but she speaks loudly, saying that chocolate cannot be eaten in the institution, and she won't give it to people who don't follow the rules. The children start crying because of the girl's words, but she fixes it by saying that if they wait one more day, she will bring them the most delicious chocolate, making the children happy. Later, Inomata, Ryuichi, and Kotarou head home, and the young man thanks the girl for staying late to help in the nursery, and as a form of gratitude, he buys her chocolate. Inomata says she doesn't understand why he's giving it to her if she's grumpy, so the young man says that's what he likes about her. Inomata is completely embarrassed, but on the other side of the street is Yuki watching them. The next day, the protagonist is in sports class, but his uniform doesn't help as everyone is cold. Then, Yoshiko arrives with all the nursery children as he took them for a walk. Ryuichi, feeling the children's embrace, begins to feel a little relieved as they are warm, but the young man asks Yoshihito to take them back as they surely bother his classmates, but they say they want to carry the children to warm up a bit, which scares the children, who run away, and the students run after them trying to catch them. Takuma tries to hide behind the bushes, but a stranger hiding there lifts him up. The boys notice and Hayato throws his shoe at him, making him fall, but the child says he's his father. Back at the nursery, the children's father, named Kosuke Mamizuka, apologizes for causing trouble, but the reason he was hiding is that he didn't want the students to recognize him as he is a very famous actor, and he just wanted to spend time with his children whom he hasn't seen for 6 months. But seeing that his children don't approach him, Ryuichi says they will help him so the children can have more confidence in him. But no matter how hard he tries, Kazuma, one of the twins, cries every time he sees him. So the man gives up and leaves, leaving the boys in charge of the children. The twins feel a little embarrassed seeing him leave. When Kosuke is leaving the institution, he meets a young student who recognizes him and shouts his name. So immediately all the girls surround him asking for autographs. But to his surprise, in the distance, are the twins calling him Dad, which excites him. So he tries to get through the crowd, but he can't until the children's mother appears and asks all the students to go to class, otherwise they would repeat the year, and the girls leave, leaving the place clear. The lady explains that the reason the children were afraid of him is that she showed them the actor's latest performance where he plays the villain, but they always call him Dad and ask for him. The twins appear behind him, asking him to play together, finally making their father happy. A new day begins, and the protagonist is already at high school. As the school year kicks off, all the students choose a club to join, but the young man, seeing the board filled with proposals, doesn't manage to put up the babysitter club poster. He then goes to the nursery, where all the children welcome him happily. There, Shido sees the poster the young man made, so he comes up with the idea of taking the children on a tour of all the clubs and using the opportunity to find a place to put up the sign-up sheet. The children are excited that they'll get to visit their favorite clubs, so they all head out into the institution's halls. While the other students watch them, not understanding what they're doing there, Karen, a nursery girl, visits her mother's club, but they get a fright because in the theater club, they were trying out makeup and her mother's makeup was somewhat terrifying. The teacher takes the opportunity to try to recruit Ryuichi, saying he has potential, but seeing that the other club members praise the students, he refuses to join. However, Kotarou gets his brother's attention to let him know that the other children are escaping. They try to follow them, but stop to look at an ant that caught Kotarou's attention, and even then, they lose sight of them. The children reach the cooking club because they smelled a delicious sweet aroma, and they are surprised to find out that Inomata belongs to that club. But at that moment, Ryuichi arrives, so the girl doesn't waste time and scolds him for losing sight of the children, as something could have happened to them. The children are scared, as are their classmates, but one of them defends her, believing she only did it because she cared about them and reacted that way. The young man apologizes for the trouble and takes them to the baseball club, where Hayato is. Once there, one of the members asks Ryuichi if he will continue to be a babysitter this year because it seems to be tough, then walks away, leaving the protagonist pensive. Meanwhile, Taka finds his brother among the players, but he doesn't pay much attention to him, so the boy shouts at him for being uninterested in his younger brother's support. But the student goes to them to scold his younger brother again for distracting him. Ryuichi still apologizes for causing trouble, but Hayato tells him it's not a bother because his club is pathetic. The protagonist then watches as the other students have fun in their clubs, feeling frustrated. But when he reacts, he realizes that everyone is watching him, including Kotarou, who decides not to go with him when his brother asks him to accompany him to put up his club poster. When the protagonist is putting up the poster, Hayato appears with Kotarou, and the student hands him his club registration form as Kotarou recruited him with just a few gestures because he saw his brother feeling a bit down and he just wanted to help him. Then the other children show up to offer cookies to Ryuichi and make him feel better. The next day, the protagonist wakes up feeling somewhat heavy, and when he looks down, he sees that Kotarou is sleeping on top of him, so he asks him to get off. At that moment, the director arrives to scold the young man for still sleeping, but they both fall off the bed, and there the lady realizes that Ryuichi has a fever, so she takes Kotarou to take him away because if he stays there, he could catch the illness, leaving the boy alone in the room to rest. Outside, his brother wants to enter the room, but the director asks him to help her prepare some medicine for the young man. The director asks Kotarou to squeeze a lemon to prepare a cold infusion and lower the fever, so the boy tries to do it, but no matter how hard he tries, he can't, but his persistence pays off as he tries with all his might until he manages to fill the glass a little. However, when he tries to tell the director, the glass falls, spilling the juice he managed to get, but he tries again anyway. Seikoe visits the young man and says that the fever has lowered a bit. Meanwhile, Ryuichi has a dream where his parents take Kotarou with them on a trip from which they never returned. This devastates the young man, who was also crying outside the dream, but his younger brother wakes him up by touching his face. The boy gets up quickly because his eyes start to burn, and the director arrives because Kotarou prepared lemon medicine for him. Ryuichi thanks his brother for caring about him and appreciates that Kotarou stayed by his side all this time to help him get through it. The lady takes the boy again to take him away, but he doesn't want to because he believes Ryuichi is cured since he already took the medicine, so the young man asks her not to stay in the same room as him because he's sick. Kotarou gets so sad that not even the director's secretary can cheer him up with sweets. After a few days, the protagonist is at the nursery with Kotarou, but the baby named Midori arrives. Before they start playing, the young man tries to change the baby's diaper, but in a moment of carelessness, she crawls away to the door where a student named Hiroyuki Inui was about to enter, but due to the smell, he stopped. Later, the student mentions that he's there because he wanted to meet Midori, as she will be his future daughter because he plans to marry the teacher. Ryuichi doesn't understand why he says that if the woman is married, but the young man replies that he can't understand it since he has no experience in love. At that moment, he leaves, asking not to tell anyone that he was there. Later, Yashigo appears, waking the young man from his state of shock. Ryuichi realizes that he has been there for a long time, and his time in the nursery is over, so he must return to class without being able to read the book to his brother. However, before leaving, he asks Yoshihito about Midori's mother, to which he replies that her husband is always on business trips, so they don't see him much. Once in class, Ryuichi asks Hayato about what happened in the nursery because he thinks that teacher Sawatari is cheating on her husband with a student. But his friend tells him that he's not interested in such situations, and it's the choice of the people involved. Ryuichi continues to wonder why she would cheat on her husband when she has a daughter, so he reconsiders what the student said earlier about him not being able to understand it since he never experienced love. When Ryuichi returns to the nursery, he hears a scream coming from there, and upon opening the door, he realizes that Hiroyuki is being attacked by all the children while Yoshihito just watches. Ryuichi asks the children not to treat weak people like that, but Hiroyuki reproaches him because he told him that Midori wasn't in the room when she was the baby he was carrying in his arms. Later, he complains that it makes no sense to steal from a married person. Hiroyuki responds that he just wants to help her since he found out that she was raising her daughter alone because her husband is in heaven. At that moment, teacher Sawatari arrives to pick up her daughter, and the student takes the opportunity to take the woman's hand and try to confess his feelings and intentions, but the baby starts crying, interrupting the conversation. As she holds her daughter, she asks her not to cry because her father is coming back from his business trip, which surprises Hiroyuki. He then says that what he wanted to tell her is that if she ever wants to go out with her husband, he can take care of her daughter. The woman thanks him for his offer and leaves. The student reproaches Yoshihito for taking advantage of the moment and telling him that the woman was a widow just to see him suffer, leaving Hiroyuki. Ryuichi tries to ask him not to feel down in that place because the children, seeing him like that, will only tease him and try to play with him, but he also tells him not to feel that way because what he did was mature. The student thanks him for his words but says that he admires the young man a lot because taking care of children is a difficult task and that he understands his place in the teacher's relationship. The next day, Ryuichi plays heroes with the children while Kirin says she won't play with them anymore because she believes they should start studying. The young man thinks she's behaving like his friend Inamada, but the girl just wants to become a witch. Taka goes against her because according to him, witches don't exist while heroes do, and at that moment, a conflict arises between them. The next morning, Taka brings a photograph where he is with a hero dressed in red, confirming that heroes exist, so he tells the girl that she can't confirm that witches exist, so she says she'll prove it by flying. Everyone goes outside and Karen takes on a small broom, hoping to be able to fly, but that doesn't work, so Ryuichi feels sorry for her. In class, he talks to Hayato about what happened. His friend tells him that he should tell her the truth and not give her hope and dreams that won't come true, but the protagonist doesn't want to take away the children's dreams. At that moment, Inomea appears and the kids tell her the situation, and she says she'll gather information to confirm that witches exist, but later in class, Inomea gives him a report, but the images are too terrifying to show to the children. Then he thinks he could ask the director for the favor of pretending to be a witch, but he believes the lady will get angry with him for comparing her to someone so evil. In the nursery, the children play while Karen continues outside trying to fly, but at one point, she gets the idea to climb the stairs and jump to fly, but luckily, Ryuichi sees her and runs towards her and manages to save her. But Karen still starts crying, so the young man doesn't know if she's crying because she didn't manage to fly or because she fell from so high. Then the director of the academy appears, telling the girl that she will never fly because it's a process that takes hundreds of years, leaving the children imagining that she is a witch and calming the girl down. Later, Taka tells Karen that he will help her with her training so she can learn to fly, making the girl happy. It's a new day and second-year student Nezu Chukichi is taking care of his siblings while one of them argues with their father and runs away from home. At that moment, the protagonist is at his new home hanging clothes while Kotarou watches the ants. He decides to follow them until he finds something that immediately catches his attention, calling his brother to see it too. It's Nezu's younger brother, Kichi, trapped in the bushes. Ryuichi tries to help, but the child refuses and accidentally hits the young man, leaving Kotarou feeling bad for seeing his brother hurt. Ryuichi calms him down while asking Kichi if he is Nezu's brother and why he was there. But after the child refuses to answer, Ryuichi asks his brother to stay there while he continues his household chores. Ryuichi takes the opportunity to call Nezu, but seeing that he doesn't have his contact, he calls Yaji, who arrives with Inomata, who only came to control the student. The protagonist says he called him because Nezu wasn't available as he was working. Inomata says it's impossible since students are forbidden to work, but Yaji says his friend has permission to do so because he needs the money to take care of his siblings. Inomata gets upset and starts scolding the child, asking how he can be so spoiled and spy on other people's houses when his brother is trying hard to give them everything. Kichi starts crying and says he just wanted to know what it feels like to live in a big house and have things he desires, like a video game he can't get. At that moment, his brother appears, also trapped in the bushes, and says that Kichi is the only one in his class who doesn't have that game, and that's why he ran away. Yaji has a childhood memory with Nezu where his friend was also the only child without a video game, but he didn't care because he said that if he wanted it, he would study hard to make it. This leaves Kichi speechless, realizing he wants to be like his brother, so he asks Ryuichi to get him out of where he's trapped. The young man does it, but at that moment, Nezu arrives and apologizes to Kashima for the trouble caused, giving him a gift and then giving his brother the video game he desired so much. He tells him that from now on, he will study hard to make a video game like him. At that moment, he realizes that Yaji was the one who told that story, so he scolds him, saying that the things he said back then were lies. The next day, the protagonist tells Yoshihito that he won't be able to take care of the children during break because he has to finish a chemistry task. So he leaves the babysitter alone with the children. But then he realizes that his companion forgot his lunch, so Kotarou offers to take it to him. Once the other children are eating, the babysitter gives the lunch to the child and sends him off to find his brother alone. But then he realizes that he shouldn't have done that. Just then, he sees Yuki passing by and asks him to watch over the child, offering him a photo of teacher Solitary in return. At school, the students see the child walking through the halls but don't notify the teachers since they realize it's his first errand, so they let him go until he reaches the stairs and a student accidentally bumps into him, making him fall along with his lunch. But then Yuki arrives masked to save him and protect him from anyone interfering until he finally reaches his brother's classroom. Despite having already eaten, he thanks his brother for caring about him, and they both go to eat together on the stairs. It's a new day, and in the first-year high school classes, the students ask Yuki if she likes Ryuichi, causing her to blush and admit that she likes him a little. To try to calm her down, her classmates say that he's really attractive besides being kind and having a good heart. But Kamitani is also someone attractive, although he's a bit scary. One of them tells Yuki that even if she manages to go out with him, it will be difficult for her to be his priority since his main rival is his little brother. She also mentions that he has become very close to Inomata, but they don't understand why since she's someone who only cares about studying and doesn't seem to be romantic. However, Inomata overhears this conversation as she passes by and gets upset about them talking about her, but But she stops when Ryuichi and Kamitani appear, so she just leaves the place annoyed, remembering what the students said and those words Ryuichi once told her. Later, she meets Kirin and Kotarou in the school corridors, and she says she doesn't understand why they're allowed to go out as they could get lost. So she decides to take them back to the nursery, but the children say they're there to play with her since she never visits them. Inamata gets nervous and says she doesn't go to the nursery because Ryuichi is there. The children interpret that she hates the young man, so they decide to prove that he's a good person. They go to Ryuichi's classroom, and Kotarou approaches him to be held and show how affectionate he is. But Kirin sees that it doesn't surprise her, so she thinks she likes strict boys. She approaches Ryuichi and asks him to hit her, otherwise she'll become evil. But no one expected Hayato to be the one to hit her, as she requested. The girl starts crying, and Ryuichi lifts her to calm her down. And then she says that he has to be the one to hit her so that Inamata makes amends with him. But she opens the door and asks them not to continue as she understands that he's a good person. But the children misunderstood, so Kirin asks her if the real reason is that she likes Ryuichi. Everyone stares at her as she blushes and leaves the place, saying it's not that. The protagonist runs after her, while Yuki just watches, and when he catches her, he grabs her hand, stopping the girl's heart, but he just tells her she has a sticker on her skirt, surprising his classmates as they didn't expect him to do that. The next day, Kosu goes to the nursery alone with Takuma as Kazuma stayed home with a cold. The children's father becomes sad because for the first time, his sons will be separated, thinking both will be sad. But Takuma is very happy because he promised his mother to have a lot of fun for both of them. Their father leaves, feeling disguised, but thinking his son will soon be sad for not being with his twin. Later in the nursery, everyone watches as Takuma holds Kotarou's hand, but Taka doesn't like it because he says Kotarou is his friend. They accidentally hold the boy between them until Hayato hits his brother to let go of the child. Kirin asks why Kazuma didn't attend the nursery, so Ryuichi tells them he stayed home to recover. Upon hearing this, they all want to play with Takuma so he won't be alone. They all attack Yoshihiko, and even though he asks for help from his classmates, they leave him alone because they have to go to class. On the way, the protagonist wonders if Takuma will be okay without his brother, but Hayato tells him that it's probably his twin who will be sad, since not only is he without his brother, but he's also sick. Besides, he's always crying while Takuma always seems happy. Later, the children take a nap, but Takuma wakes up and sees his brother isn't there, so he leaves. Fortunately, Kotarou sees him and follows him. However, on the way, they meet Ryuichi, who was thinking about the twins. There, Kotarou shows his brother that the boy escaped from the nursery, so they find him sitting alone at the school entrance. The boy asks if his brother is better, but as the young man has no answer, he says he'll ask Yoshihito to call and find out. But then his mother appears with Kazuma, and when she sees him, she starts crying because she missed him so much. Then Yoshihito appears and says that now the situation is reversed because it's Takuma who cries and Kazuma who smiles. The next day, the protagonist arrives at the academy, and when he opens his locker, he finds a letter. A classmate standing next to him says it's a love letter and probably from Yuki Yoshimaru, but she's also there, so she denies her friend that it was her. At the same time, she feels sad because someone else likes Ryuichi. Then Hayato grabs the letter and says it apparently has no sender. However, the young man takes it back to say he'll be the one to read the letter, but Inamata arrives just then, asking the boys to go to their classes and not stand around. Taking advantage of Ryuichi's distraction, his classmate takes the letter and begins to read it. It says that a girl is in love with him and wants to see him after class. The boy takes the letter and leaves the place feeling lost and nervous, while Inamata and Yuki are surprised. That day, the protagonist was very distracted in the nursery because the children thought he was sick because of how flushed he looked. It's the first time something like this happens to him, so he doesn't know how to react or what to say to the girl since he doesn't know her. In the evening, Seikawa prepares a special dinner as he found out that the boy received his first love letter, and he says it in front of the headmistress and Kotarou. Now the boy realizes the real reason he's feeling this way. Even before going to bed, Kotarou chooses his bedtime story, but when he chooses it, he sees that his brother is very pensive. The next day on the way to school, Ryuichi keeps thinking about that letter and how to politely reject the girl. Meanwhile, Kotarou sees a lemon tree and lets go of his brother's hand to run towards the tree. At the same time, Inamata and Yuki cross paths as they both head to school early to find out who the girl from the letter is. Just then, Ryuichi appears running and grabs Inamata's hand, asking her desperately if she saw his brother since he let go of his hand, but he noticed it later. The girls get worried and help him look for him until Hayato, along with Taka and Kotarou, appears, and Kotarou hands a lemon to Ryuichi as he still thinks he's sick and just wants to take care of him. Later, the young man meets the girl from the letter to reject her, so he feels relieved, while Inamata and Yuki were spying on them and realize that he would reject them too since his only priority is Kotarou. At that moment, Yuki, in a friendly manner, asks Inamata if she can call her by her name, which is Maria, as they could be friends. She refuses because she doesn't like being called that, although Yuki keeps insisting. On the weekend, Taka calls the headmistress's house to talk to Kotarou. Saikawa answers, but during the call, the boy remains silent as he was nervous and only his breathing could be heard. So Hayato speaks for him. And when talking to his friends, Taka invites Kotarou to the festival, and they both accept. At the festival, Hayato scolds his brother for bringing his toy sword as he could lose it, but the boy doesn't care and takes Kotarou for a walk while the boys follow them and buy some cotton candies. They keep walking until they come across a somewhat misleading game stall, so Taka insists on playing, but the boys hold onto their brothers and leave that place. Then they meet Yoshihiko at one of the game stalls, so he invites the boys to play, but Hayato realizes his brother isn't carrying his sword, so Taka starts crying. Ryuichi tries to calm him down by saying that they'll all look for it together, but after a while, Hayato tells his friend that it's late, so they should go home as he tries to make his brother understand that he should give up. But Ryuichi wants to keep helping to search along with Kotarou, so they ask at a stall where the owner suggests going to the Lost and Found booth. When they get there, they meet Yaji and Nezu, who show them all the swords they found, but none of them belong to Taka. Once again, he cries, but Hayato convinces him to give up, and in return, he'll take him to the game stall he wanted to go to. But first, he must thank Ryuichi and Kotarou for helping him. When they arrive at the game stall, the man asks him to pull a rope to see if he wins a big prize or not, but Taka takes too long to think, so Kotarou pulls one of them and wins the sword that belonged to Taka. Everyone is surprised as it looked like he stole it, and Hayato grabs the man to demand an explanation. As a reward for what he did, the man gives them a piggy bank shaped like a video game, which Ryuichi gives to the headmistress. It's a beach day and the nursery is there. Some of the children enjoy the water while others are afraid of it. Also present are the mothers of the children, who encourage them to enjoy the day since they took care of them. At that moment, Inamata arrives wearing her school swimsuit, but the women don't like it, saying that women should always be well-groomed, so they take her to buy a new swimsuit. Yoshihito tells Ryuichi to go enjoy the sea while he watches the children, but Ryuichi doesn't want to leave his brother alone. They go together, with Ryuichi carrying Kotarou and showing him that he shouldn't be afraid of the water. Suddenly, a big wave appears and the protagonist saves his brother by holding him up while he himself goes underwater. When he comes up, Taka mocks the babysitter for getting soaked. Then the teachers return, bringing drinks for everyone, and Inamata now changed so the children can compliment her. None of them do except Ryuichi, who only compliments her swimsuit. After the protagonist takes his brother to find the other children, some of them fall asleep and Ryuichi and Hayato go to enjoy the sea due to the hot weather. Ryuichi shares that when Kotarou was younger, he wasn't afraid of the water, but now he is, and it might be because he doesn't trust Ryuichi. Kamitani hits him for thinking like that, saying Kotarou was too young to remember if he had been in the sea before. Just then, Kotarou wakes up and seeing Ryuichi in the water, he runs toward him, but a wave carries him away. Fortunately, one of the teachers grabs him just in time, but he still starts crying. Ryuichi notices from a distance and immediately swims to him, comforting him. A few days later, Taka arrives at the nursery crying, and his mother tells the protagonist that the boy scribbled on an important baseball signed by his brother's favorite player, but Hayato didn't scold him or say anything, he just ignored him. So his mother thinks he's upset but not showing it, and she asks Ryuichi to talk to him. At that moment, the academy's director appears and tells them there's a plan to fulfill, so she asks them to do their tasks while she and her secretary take care of Taka and Kotarou. The protagonist goes to the baseball club, where one of the members advises him not to talk to Hayato as he's been practicing alone and gives a terrifying look to anyone who approaches him. However, Ryuichi approaches him anyway, and once there, he realizes the other boy's warning was true. So they go to a private place and Ryuichi tells him about what happened with Kotarou, mentioning how sometimes his brother breaks his things, like when he ruined the homework he worked on all night or threw his phone in the toilet, making him sad because he had messages from his parents on it. But he can't get angry at his brother because he's just a kid and does things without thinking. Hayato says that he knows Taka did it on purpose, and even though he was asked to apologize, he only did it out of obligation. Meanwhile, at the nursery, the director talks to Taka and asks if he has a cherished object, to which the boy shows his toy sword. She takes the sword and asks her secretary to bring a hammer to break the toy. When she's about to do it, Taka stops her, crying because he doesn't want to lose his cherished object. Thanks to the director, he realizes what he did to his brother. When Ryuichi arrives at the nursery, he asks the boy if he wants to apologize to his brother since baseball practice is over. As Hayato is leaving, he sees the protagonist with Taka and Kotarou, so he just turns around and walks away. But Taka runs after him and falls, crying, apologizing to his brother while he accepts the apology in his own way and tells him to hurry up, or he'll leave him there. He also apologizes for not spending more time with him, knowing that's what his brother wanted. On their way home, Hayato tells Ryuichi that he'll teach the kids how to play baseball. It's Morinomiya Academy's cultural festival day, and the nursery is also participating. They decide to set up a cafe, and Yoshihito made costumes for all the children, including Ryuichi. However, Ryuichi gets startled by the sudden presence of one of the mothers and falls, allowing Taka to make enroll. When Kotarou sees his brother in that state, he joins him enrolling. Hayato arrives and helps Ryuichi get up. At that moment, Karen's mother appears again and apologizes for not being able to be present to see the children serve juice, but her husband will. Before leaving, she asks the babysitters for a favor. Meanwhile, a bearded man asks Hiroyuki to take him to the nursery, and he does. Then Kiran's father arrives with flowers for his wife, and Kiran is very happy to see him since it's the first time he visits the nursery. However, when the woman introduces the nursery teachers, explaining that she asked the boys to dress up as women, the man realizes Yoshihito is a man. He decides to take his daughter away because there's not only a male babysitter but also boys in the nursery, fearing one of them might like his daughter. He acts angry towards his wife for not informing him of this. She's no longer there, but Ryuichi stops him, and the man starts praising him, mistaking him for a girl until Midori removes the wig, revealing the truth. Ryuichi asks Hayato for help, but the man mistakes him for a woman again. Losing patience, Ryuichi takes off the wig due to the heat, and the man realizes all the babysitters are boys, becoming very upset. Karen feels a bit sad, thinking her father doesn't want to see her serve the juice since she practiced a lot. Then Midori's bearded father arrives, surprising Hiroyuki, who realizes he's the man with the teacher he likes. However, he sees Ryuichi with a wig and mistakes him for a pretty girl before leaving as all the mothers and the twins' father appear. Later, everyone gathers around and the children start serving juice to their parents. The men start thinking about how quickly their children have grown. Soatari surprises them by apologizing on behalf of the director for not being able to attend, so Karen's father, who is a photographer, convinces them all to take a picture for her. Later, Taka's mother visits the nursery to invite the children to see some chicks hatch. All the children get excited, including Ryuichi, who says he always dreamed of chicks becoming fond of him and following him. Hayato tells him the children always do that since they follow him everywhere. However, the lady asks them to wait until the next day as they weren't ready yet. The children get upset, but they are taken to the science room anyway. When they see only eggs in an incubator, they get even more upset. Fortunately, Hayato is there to restore order since everyone fears him. The next day, Kotarou can't wait anymore, so they go to school early, and luckily, the teacher is in the classroom, so she lets them in. The chicks are about to hatch, and after a long wait, they start hatching. Once they're all born, Ryuichi and Kotarou take them to the nursery, where they realize the chicks have become attached to Kotarou, following him everywhere. Taka gets upset as he also wants to play with them, so he runs towards them, scaring the animals who run around the room while the others try to catch them. Suddenly, a cat appears at the window and jumps towards one of the chicks, but Kotarou intervenes to defend the animal. However, Hayato appears just in time to catch the cat and save both Kotarou and the chick. Ryuichi congratulates his brother for being so brave in that situation. The next day, Yoshihito calls Ryuichi to tell them he won't be able to go to the nursery because he's sick, so he sent Soatari to take care of the children while the young man attends classes. Kotarou decides to help the secretary. But when the protagonist leaves, the children stare at Soatari, making him think they're nervous because of his presence. So he kindly asks them to help and support him since he's new to these tasks. The children get excited and run towards him to show him the most fun games. Meanwhile, Yoshihito is lying in bed, thinking that maybe the children are crying because they miss him. However, he snaps back to reality and realizes that couldn't be the case. Then he receives a call from Soatari, but the young man can only hear that there was a problem with Midori as the call got cut off, and when he tries calling back, the secretary doesn't answer. In sports class, Ryuichi goes for a run around the academy while thinking about the children Soatari and Yoshihito. To his surprise, he bumps into Yusaida, who is heading to the nursery because of the call. Just then, Ryuichi and Hayato appear, holding Yusaida, who, after understanding the situation, says he will faint as he's not feeling well due to a fever. However, Midori approaches him as she seems to miss him during the day. The other children ask him to go back to rest and recover so he can return to the nursery soon. Later, the baby finally says her first word, Yusaida, so the teacher feels sad as she was hoping she would say mom or dad like all the other children. In the following days, Yuki is seen spying on the nursery, wanting to see Ryuichi up close, although she feels like she's betraying her new friend Inomata. Suddenly, Maria appears and Yuki starts justifying that she's there because she lost her ball, not because she wants to spy on Ryuichi. However, the girl thinks she's there to see the children, but she's too embarrassed to approach. So Yuki takes her by the arm and leads her to the nursery, confessing that she was also scared at first, but put it aside because she really likes children. And she doesn't know what to do until Karen takes the initiative and asks for her name. Then everyone starts introducing themselves, leaving the girl a bit overwhelmed. Ryuichi tries to calm her down, saying that apparently the children feel comfortable with her. Although in his case, it took them a while to get used to him. Later, everyone goes outside for a walk, and the boys hold the children's hands. Yuki ends up walking with Kotarou, and as they walk, she starts thinking that the boy is actually sweet. However, he suddenly stops, and she thinks it's because he's about to cry. So she takes out her handkerchief to wipe his tears, but she realizes he actually has a runny nose and ends up filled with disgust. Then Taka arrives to take the handkerchief from the girl, but in doing so, he lifts her skirt a bit, unaware. To calm her down, Karen brings her some gifts she collected from the place, which surprises her as they are insects, and she ends up fainting little by little, thinking she will never get along with the children like Ryuichi and Inamata. When she wakes up, she's in the infirmary and Ryuichi is with her to apologize, but also to tell her that he also doesn't like snot and gross things, and he gets tired of taking care of the children, but they always have so much energy. He realizes that taking care of children is hard work, but he can endure it because they are the children and he loves them very much. He believes that one day she will also understand this. At that moment, the children approach the window with Yoshihito to apologize. Karen asks her if she likes flowers since that's what she collected for her at the moment. Yuki is happy and promises to come back to play with them. Then she asks Ryuichi about Inamata, so she runs off to look for her. Maria was leaving school feeling a bit sad as she thought she always ends up ruining everything no matter how hard she tries. But at that moment, Yuki arrives and hugs her from behind, apologizing but also thanking her for helping her. It's a new day and the protagonist receives a call from his classmates inviting him to the movies, but the young man doesn't want to accept because he doesn't want to leave his brother alone. However, Seikowa appears just then and asks him to accept the invitation because he will take care of Kotarou since the director asked the young man not to neglect his relationships with his friends. Ryuichi ends up accepting the outing, and as Seikowa leaves, the secretary promises to protect the child of his life, but the young man asks him not to exaggerate. Nonetheless, Kotarou feels a little sad but swears to do what Seikowa tells him to do. Meanwhile, Seikowa notices Kotarou looking bored, so he tries to prepare him some food, but the boy refuses. He then attempts to make him play by pretending to be a kitten, which seems to work. Ryuichi arrives at the cinema, where his classmates are waiting for him. Just then, Kamitani shows up, and the boys notice a mark on his face. He explains that Taka bit him before leaving because he wanted him to take him, but he calmed him down with a punch. Then he asks Ryuichi if Kotarou was left crying, to which the young man replies that he arrived late because he didn't want to leave his brother alone. While watching the movie, the protagonist continues to think about his brother and hopes he's behaving well with his caregiver. Meanwhile, at home, Seikowa draws a picture of Ryuichi on a ball and throws it for Kotarou to catch. However, in his attempts to catch it, Kotarou kicks it, and it ends up in a library, where he's amazed by the number of books. Seikowa tells him that place belonged to the director's son, where he used to meet with his wife to read their books. On one occasion, he read a joke book to the secretary, trying to make him smile, but you never saw him smile before he passed away. After nobody used that place, but the director still takes care of it. Suddenly, Seikowa realizes Kotarou is next to him with a storybook, wanting him to read it. At that moment, the director of the academy arrives and hears noises coming from the library. She looks over and sees her son and daughter-in-law smiling as they read the books, but then she realizes it's Seikowa and Kotarou. Later, Ryuichi returns home quickly as he misses his brother. When he opens the door, Kotarou runs out to hug him as he was waiting for him and missed him a lot. The young man thanks Seikowa for taking care of his brother and gives him a keychain as a gift, although he thinks it's not a good present. However, the secretary receives it with love and thanks them with a big smile as he had a nice day thanks to them. It's December and Christmas is starting to be felt in the city, but the one most excited is Kotarou, who stops at every store, sign, or every man who looks like Santa Claus. After a long journey, they finally arrive at the nursery, and Ryuichi apologizes to Yoshihito for being late, explaining it was because of his brother. The boy had a brochure with him as it had a drawing of Santa, but Taka arrives and tells him he got it at a toy store in a mall and asked for a transformation belt. Yoshihito takes the opportunity to tell Taka that Santa Claus won't visit him because he's a bad boy for not eating broccoli, making the boy cry. After a difficult decision, Taka says from that day on, he'll eat all his meals. But Hayato arrives and hits the babysitter for making his brother cry. He says he at least got him to eat vegetables, although Hayato tells his brother that Santa won't visit him because his mother buys the gifts. Fortunately, Ryuichi manages to stop him in time so as not to take away his imagination. Then Kotarou approaches his friend and pets him, telling him he's a good boy. The days go by and the children are very excited about Christmas. During class, the protagonist stays thinking about how to dress up as Santa Claus, so he tries to put on some clothes on his belly, but his classmates catch him, and he immediately takes off what he had put on. He tells his classmates he wants to dress up as Santa to make his brother happy, which moves the kids as they see him as a good brother. They start looking for a suit that fits him through their cell phones, but they also realize his cell phone isn't working properly. They recommend he ask the director for a new one for Christmas, but the young man refuses as he thinks it's enough for him to be given a place to live. Later, they see Hayato leaving but ask Ryuichi not to follow him as he won't attend classes, and later he's seen visiting the director. On Christmas Eve, Seikowa prepares a big dinner for Kotarou and his brother but apologizes as he won't be able to be with them, just like the director, as she had an important meeting. Kotarou feels sad as he wanted to spend the night with them. Unfortunately, his brother realizes his feelings and cheers him up. However, he then asks him to stay at the table while he goes to the bathroom since he had to dress up, but it's impossible for him because his brother doesn't leave him alone. When they're in the bathroom, the doorbell rings, so Kotarou gets excited as he thinks it's Santa Claus. Immediately, they go to open it, and to their surprise, all their friends are there, both the nursery children with their families and the director and the secretary. The director approaches them and gives Ryuichi a gift, which is a cell phone as Hayato told her he needed a new one. The protagonist thinks that when he opened the door, he felt a bit disappointed as his parents weren't there, but now he feels satisfied, excited, and happy because without realizing it, both he and Kotarou now have a new family. Final exams are approaching and the principal asks Ryuichi if he's already studying, but the young man says he hasn't had time to start yet. So the woman decides that he should study from that moment until the exams are over, but he's forbidden from going to the nursery and taking care of Kotarou. She asks her secretary to replace him. They bid farewell at that moment, making the promise that they will both strive until they meet again. The next day, Yoshihiro arrives at the nursery and is surprised to see Seikowa there. The man tells him about Ryuichi and Hayato's situation since he won't be visiting the nursery either. Meanwhile, when classes end, the protagonist prepares to go to the nursery, but remembers that the principal forbade him. So he tells Kamitani to go study at the library. Kamitani questions why he should study, but he receives a message from his mother threatening him to study, or else she'll break his DVDs. At the nursery, the children ask about the absence of the other caregivers because they want to play with them. Seikowa tries to explain the situation, and when the children don't understand, he asks for Yoshihiro's help. Yoshihiro suggests that they also study to surprise Ryuichi, so they immediately start coloring to give the young man a gift. Later, the protagonist arrives home and finds Kotarou sleeping. When he wakes up, he's surprised to see his brother happy, seemingly having had a nice day without him. However, he becomes saddened as it seems to hurt him that his younger brother is starting not to need him. After the exams end, one of the boys invites Ryuichi to celebrate, but he declines as he's heading to the nursery. When he arrives, everyone surprises him with cards and drawings because they also decided to study to show their support for him. When they hand him the exam results, the teacher congratulates the protagonist as he's the one who scored the highest. While he's at the nursery, he thinks about how to thank the secretary for taking care of the children, so he decides to prepare a special meal. However, Sawatari arrives, luckily not having heard the whole conversation. Yoshihiro takes the opportunity to ask about his favorite food, but Sawatari starts naming a bunch of dishes with strange names, leaving Ryuichi confused about what to do. That night, the secretary prepares a great celebration dinner for Ryuichi for his school scores, but notices he doesn't seem so happy. Ryuichi comments that he was actually thinking they do too much for them. Later, they go to sleep, and the young man dreams of the moment they arrived at the academy, and the phrase the principal said at that moment, "To give and receive," is the school's motto. So the next day, the protagonist asks the principal if he can cook for her and Sawatari as a gesture of gratitude. The secretary says that in that case, it will be like playing house with Karen, and you will play the role of the mother while the principal will be the father. Later, after the young man and his brother go shopping, they decide to make curry. Kotarou also helps Ryuichi cook by washing the potatoes. Once the food is ready, the young man modestly tells them that if they don't like the food, they don't have to finish it. However, the principal takes the first bite and is surprised by how delicious it is, while Sawatari is fascinated and praises him excessively, making the young man nervous. But he also says that now he has a favorite dish.